So after 210 years of back-breaking labor, after decades of harsh and bitter enslavement, Moses and Aaron enter Pharaoh's palace and demand that he free the children of Israel. If not, they warn, God will afflict the Egyptians with terrible suffering, with 10 awful plagues. Pharaoh hardens his heart, refusing to listen to Moses, and the 10 plagues are administered. The Egyptians are subject to the most bizarre and frightening plagues the world has ever seen. Any child that has gone to Hebrew school will tell you what the 10 plagues were. In the first plague, the Nile River turned to blood. In the second plague, multitudes of frogs swarmed everywhere and anywhere, in the Egyptians' homes, in their beds, even into their ovens, tormenting the Egyptian people. And so it continued one after another, each plague demoralizing and humiliating their captors until Pharaoh and his people finally allow the Jews to leave. Nay, they beg the Jews to leave Egypt. And every year we read about these events in the Torah. At every Passover Seder we retell the story of the Exodus, repeating once again the tale of the Jewish suffering and the great plagues and miracles that God performed for our ancestors. The question is why? The Exodus took place over 3,000 years ago. It happened to an ancient people living in a distant, faraway land. Why would this in any way be relevant to us? What's more, the Torah commands us to remember the Exodus from Egypt not just once a year, but every single day of our lives. In fact, the Torah says that in every generation, man must see himself as if he personally had gone out of Egypt. Are you, or is anyone you know, living in Egypt, suffering under the whip of the cruel taskmasters? Hasidic philosophy, also known as Jewish mysticism or the Kabbalah, explains that being enslaved in Egypt does not only mean being forced to remain in a particular geographic location. The Hebrew word for Egypt, Mitzrayim, is etymologically related to the word Meitzarim, which means boundaries or limitations. There is an Egypt, so to speak, that enslaves us on a level that's beyond the physical, on a spiritual, emotional, or even on a psychological plane. We can be slaves to our inhibitions, to our fears, to our habits and prejudices. We all have a Pharaoh lurking inside of us, preventing us from expressing our genuine inner selves, from reaching our true spiritual potential. The Torah tells us that we can experience an exodus from this spiritual Egypt. We must break free from our enslavement to selfishness, laziness, and indifference. The 10 plagues represent 10 unique tools that can empower us to break free. The 10 plagues are a formula for spiritual liberation. If we look at the first and second plagues, where the Nile River turned to blood and swarms of frogs inundated Egypt, we can learn the first and most important step in overcoming our spiritual and psychological Pharaoh. Water is naturally cool. In fact, if the environment is cold enough, it will even turn to ice. Frogs are called ectothermic amphibians, meaning they are naturally cold-blooded creatures and usually live in and around water, which is a cool environment. Usually, when a major basketball or football game is on TV, or a new show or stage performance, or even a movie star comes to town, we get really excited and enthusiastic. We're eager to get in all the action. However, when we're engaged in performing the mitzvot, the commandments, when we're involved in experiencing our heritage, when a Jewish holiday is around the corner, oftentimes our natural inclination is not to be excited. Quite the opposite. There is a lack of enthusiasm. It becomes a chore, something that we must get done, not something that we truly enjoy. The first step in experiencing true freedom is to break the coldness, the apathy and indifference to spiritual matters, and to transform it into blood, to introduce life, warmth, and passion into our observance and into our pursuit of Jewish knowledge and Torah study. We can learn from the frogs, who went totally against their cold nature and jumped headlong into the hot, burning ovens just to fulfill God's command. I wonder what Kermit would think. I am Rabbi Benny Rappaport, and thank you for joining us.